The Lotus Emira, the last ever petrol-powered Lotus, with its manual gearbox rowing away while the supercharged V6 sings along in the background.
No. This is not that Lotus Emira. You see, if you jump in here and have a look in the footwell, it's missing a clutch pedal. We've got these paddle shifters, there's no manual lever here anymore, and in the back, there's no V6. You see, this is a Lotus Emira with a beating heart from AMG.
Yes, welcome to the Lotus Emira i4. This is the entry-level car, powered by the wild 2-litre 4-cylinder turbo engine from the Mercedes AMG A45, and fitted as standard with an 8-speed twin-clutch flappy paddle gearbox that's from AMG as well.
So, out go the Japanese bits, in comes some German mechanicals, but there's a little bit of a character transplant as well. Now, you might imagine that because this is, apparently, the last petrol-powered Lotus, they would celebrate that fact by showcasing their final engine in a glass cabinet, a display case in the back of the car. So, I'll tell you what, let's pull over and have a look at it, shall we? So, if you jump out, and that is a lot easier than it used to be in one of those old Elises or Exiges, you come round to the engine bay and you flip up the cover, and you are greeted by a rubber bath mat with Lotus written on it. There really is no engine to admire at all. You just have a slow cooker where all your shopping and luggage gets roasted, medium rare, by the engine. What I could really do with at this point is an A45 AMG to show you the maddest 4-cylinder. Oh, that's convenient.
True engine nerds will already know this little baby as the AMG M139, but I think it deserves a name like the Firecracker or the Red Hot Reaper Pepper because it's tiny but mighty. 4 cylinders, 1 turbocharger, but good for almost 420 brake horsepower.
This is such a bonkers piece of engineering. I mean, where to start? The whole block configuration is switched 180 degrees from where it would be in a normal A-Class to put the turbo at the back, so it has freer breathing pipes and supposedly less lag. But that makes it a nightmare to cool. Look, it's stuffed right down there by the bulkhead and has to be encased in all that rainbow tinfoil heat shielding. Then the turbine itself, well, that's on roller bearings for low friction. Speaking of low friction, the cylinders themselves have a nano-slide coating that's straight out of Lewis Hamilton's Formula One car. The head is oil and water cooled. I mean, I could go on about it for weeks, but I won't. I'll go and drive it instead. Look, I promise we will get back to the Lotus in a minute, but allow me to reacquaint us with the car to which it owes that engine. What an insane car. How on earth did they sign this off? You know, there's a lot I don't like about the Mercedes A45 AMG. I hate this touch-sensitive steering wheel that Mercedes now defecates into all of its cars, ruining its reputation for quality interiors. I don't like the chintziness of some of the cabin. I hate the way that that stupid rear wing rattles and cracks every time you shut the boot. There's a lot of ways that this car has been made to feel cheap and nasty, and that makes you disrespect the designers at Mercedes. But once you learn to forgive all that, then you learn to love the people in the engine department. I mean, if you daily drive one of these, then, you know, applause, fair play. It is such a ridiculous idea for what a hot hatch can be, what a family car can behave like.
This isn't a torque monster like an Audi RS3. You've really got to rev the nuts off this thing until your ears ring and the valves glow red and start banging their heads on the bonnet, and then you pull the paddle and go again. It's frenetic and it's furious, and it sounds so angry, like it's being fueled by hornets with hangovers.
I mean, when you're absolutely caning it, the fuel consumption is terrifying, and when you're not, you get caught out in the lag, it will get blitzed buy a diesel van. But when you are in the sweet spot of this engine, I think it's one of the most exciting in all of cars. Feels like it's come out of some, you know, secret skunkworks Nissan Skyline or Mitsubishi Evo that was deemed too dangerous for public consumption. Has that raw industrial Japanese banzai quality to it, this engine. I really do think that in a few years' time, when all of this has to be consigned to a scrap heap, you will not be able to believe that this engine was signed off for production and then put in a Mercedes A-Class.
Quite an engine then. I hadn't driven an A45 for a couple of years until today, and wow, it blew me away with its fury. But is it the right choice for a more grown-up sort of Lotus sports car? Something that's supposed to be less compromised and more easygoing than one of those old Exiges? Well, let's go and explore the new home this engine's found, nestling in the middle of a British sports car.
Okay, let's just shut it up a bit. The first bit of good news for Lotus fans is that the Emira i4 is lighter by 12 kilos than the V6. So no, it's not drastically simplified with added lightness, but you know, it all helps. And because this car's got a new rear subframe and the engine is slightly smaller than the V6, the 4-cylinder is slightly closer to the middle of the car. They've shoved it forward. So that means that this car's weight distribution is actually a little bit better than the V6. You've just got that mass concentrated in the centre of the car, and you get a bit more of that sense that the car pivots round your hips. It has that agility, that poise, that Caymanness. Tell you what's just as impressive is the traction as well. I mean, we're on Cup 2 tyres, cold Cup 2s I should say, and because it's August in England, it has been raining today, but if you get down into a low gear, it will take full noise.
The numbers are perfectly healthy for an everyday sports car. You get 360 brake horsepower, a top speed of 171 miles an hour, and 0 to 60 happens in 4.4 seconds, which is only a tenth or two slower than the big V6. It revs to 7,200 RPM, but you get 317 pounds-feet of torque across half the rev band, and with everything tucked back into 8th gear, it will do over 40 miles per gallon on the motorway. But perhaps you're thinking, only 360 horsepower when AMG can get over 400 from the same engine? What's going on?
Well, Lotus is making room for the V6 with its supercharger, which has 400 horsepower. And I have heard a rumour that the Emira i4s that are going to China, well, they can't have the V6 because of some taxation reasons, so their i4s are getting tuned up to 400 horsepower. So I think either way, you can expect that despite this car having a different intake and a different exhaust to how this engine is in the A-Class, you just know it's got so much headroom in it, so much tunability, and I would bet my £81,000 that there's definitely going to be hotter, fruitier, faster versions of this car with this engine. Plus, the Emira chassis definitely feels like it can handle more power. Although, you know, does more power always make a car better? I'd say no. I'd say 360 horsepower in a car this size, this grip level, on this kind of road, it's just an absolute British B-road sports car sweet spot.
But don't presume that this is a watered-down disappointment of an engine. Okay, it lacks the absolute ferocity of the installation in an A45, but even though it is just a humble turbocharged 4-pot, this is a really fun engine to get along with. It's got bags of personality.
Now, most modern turbo engines, they're all about response and a plateau of torque that you can just lie down on. This one isn't like that. For a start, it's got turbo lag, and the turbo itself is such a presence, such a character here in the car. It's always whistling and chuntering and chirruping and whooping. It has so many different voices, so many noises depending on your gear or your revs. And if you put the window down, even when you're parking, Sounds like there's a police helicopter hovering just overhead. It's like you've got a 5-star wanted level and you're in a car chase on GTA. And then as the rev builds, you get this much harder edge noise. There's a growl in the mid-range that's a little bit Alpine A110, but it's more aggressive somehow. There's also, I don't know, some Mitsubishi Evo lurking about in there. I mean, as a 4-cylinder turbo engine goes, they are normally not musical instruments. And this is hardly exotic, but just to use, to play with the pedals and the gear shift, just a way more exciting engine than one that Lotus could have bolted in from a Golf GTI.
The DCT gearbox behaves pretty well as an auto, sometimes getting caught out if you've been coasting along for a while and then ask for a big burst of acceleration. But if you take over manually with those cool metal paddles, you'll enjoy how expensive they feel in your hands, even though they are hung weirdly low on the steering wheel and they don't have much of a defined click to them.
Now, it is a very subjective thing, but I'm still not a fan of the Emira steering wheel. I didn't like it when I first drove the car, and I still don't really now. It's very thick, and when the car tramlines a lot, which it does if you have the sport chassis because of its more aggressive front geometry, just having such an angular square steering wheel just makes it a bit uncomfortable when the car's kind of jumping across the road a little. I've just about got used to the paddles hanging low on the wheel and not having enough of a defined click, but I absolutely haven't got used to the annoying touchpad, touch sensitive buttons. You can just click them and use them as proper buttons, but they're also touch sensitive. So if I go around a right-hander, my thumb brushes them and now I've got a G meter instead of the sat-nav. And actually, while I'm having a nitpick, I'm also not sold on the gear lever. I mean, Lotus could have designed anything it wanted for this gear lever, and I don't know what they were trying to do. It's got neutral on it twice, and you have to push up twice to get into reverse, and then back twice to get into first, and it takes its time when you're maneuvering. But then if you want to come over all Dom Toretto and shift on the stick down here, then you pull it left and right rather than up and down. There we go, that's second. Just doesn't feel very intuitive. Stick to the paddles.
It sounds like I'm moaning, I know, but this isn't a cheap entry-level model, so I think some moaning is fair enough. The first edition Emira i4 is over £81,000. Prices for the AMG engined version were originally touted around the 60 grand mark, and although there will be a cheaper trim level coming along with a bit less kit soon, this thing is seriously punching up into the big leagues.
But a Porsche Cayman, much as I love it, doesn't look like a £250,000 supercar, and the Lotus Emira does. It looks more exotic than an Alpine or a BMW M2 or a Toyota Supra. It's just a deeply desirable, very complete Lotus. And now in the back of it with that fizzy little engine, it carries around the proof that the Germans have a bloody good sense of humour.